You a Wu-Tang fan?
No, I'm more like an Aaron Neville Brothers fan.
Uh,
It's more
I'm
old
not gonna
school
say I
than
don't like the Neville brothers, but they are not on my phone. They are
you don't
not in
like
my
them.
music. I didn't say I didn't like them. They're just not in
Oh,
my phone.
yeah, they're. I think they're like the best band in America. I don't know if they're still playing together or not. To be honest with you,
Yeah. Hang on a second.
I used to see them every time they would come to San Diego.
That's what you're supposed to do when you like a band like that.
Yeah, well, I did, I do, but
All
I
right. All right. We're gonna take it. Okay. What's good, everybody? Um, Happy Wednesday night. Welcome to the latest episode of the Cops and Convicts podcast. I am your host, Sean Shepard. We are streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and hopefully for the first time, TikTok. Our first TikTok podcast. Subscribe, share, hit that thumbs up button and notification bells on all those platforms. And without further ado, I'm going to stop talking about what we're doing right now and talk about who we have with us. Dear friend, 8 years in the making, former San Diego Police Department officer, Dr. Terry Hoskins. Terry, welcome to the podcast.
good evening, Sean. It's a privilege to be here.
Man, you don't have to sound that formal, bro.
I actually mean it. I We tried this numerous times a year or so ago, and my schedule wasn't working out. And I've always admired all your work, and it. Even you're no longer down in San Diego, you kind of outgrew us and went up to the big leagues. But what you do with Game Changer at the beginning was just an awesome experience. And so I really do admire all you do and that you're still staying up with it. So it's a privilege to be here. I mean
Well,
that.
I appreciate the kind words, man. Enough about Game Changer. There's so much I don't know about you, Terry. Before we got online, you had mentioned about being from Kentucky. My experience with Kentucky was I had an interview with Tubby Smith. And yeah, I had an interview with Tubby Smith in Louisville in 1996, the summer of 1997. I'm sorry. And he flew me out to interview me during a summer league game at the University of Louisville. And he had taken the Kentucky job. I was at Boston College, and I had never been in Kentucky. I flew into no, I flew out of the Cincinnati, Kentucky airport. Does that sound about right? No,
Yeah, it's strange. Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So I don't know much about Kentucky. Talk to me about your upbringing in Kentucky. What was high school like for you? What was family life for you in Kentucky?
So I'm from, if you go southwest of Louisville, I'm about 5 hours southwest in the middle of area of nowhere. It's west of Bowling Green, south of Owensboro. Um, my nearest neighbor was a mile away. That's my grandparents' house.
Really?
Yeah.
So you're from the
Um,
stick. You're from the sticks.
I am from the middle of nowhere, Sean. Literally.
Okay.
We had one high school in the entire county. Um, and I'm from a very dysfunctional family. Parents divorced early. My sister got pregnant right before she got ready to go into high school. She's a year older than me. Um, and it was just the military was my ticket out, basically, of my. So I only go back to Kentucky to visit the bourbon trails.
We gonna talk about your love for bourbon, but
Yes.
So
I
you
do.
were not happy in Kentucky. Home life was not pleasant for you.
No, my father was very abusive. Um, my mom, the whole area back there is very simple. Where I'm from, because everybody was underground coal miners, all the men. All the women should have just been pregnant and raised kids, stay at home. When my parents divorced, mom wasn't really, um, didn't have the faculties to provide. So it was just a struggle all the way through. And then I mean, there's a lot of things that was involved in it, but for a boy growing up, I got to hunt and fish and all that stuff all I wanted. Um, but I have no desires to go back.
What was the socioeconomic situation there? You grew up in rural Kentucky.
Yeah.
Did the people at your high school did they have money? Were they poor? Talk to me about that.
There was a big divide. So you had the individuals who were underground coal miners back in its heyday. They were making tons of money. The union really was taking care of them, and they were tons of money. So you had the big farmers, you had the coal miners with little farms like we had. And then when the strikes went on and the coal mines went out of business, well, that created a huge divide. Everyone lost, a lot of people like us lost their houses. Um, a lot of people turned to drugs, and drugs at the time was, there was no like meth or anything like that, but drugs was a huge alternative for people. And I come from a dry county, believe it or not.
And when you
So
say dry, that means you can't purchase alcohol on Sunday, or you
you
can't
can't
purchase alcohol at
purchase
all.
at all unless you go to someone who's selling it from their house.
What's that about?
Well, it's a way that people make money without the stores having to do it. So they don't have to, so it's all illegal. Kind of like moonshine running back in its heyday. So what would happen was I mean, I had friends that still made moonshine, their parents um, and grandparents, but most of the time is they would go outside of the county, buy alcohol, whatever county you could buy it from, and then bring it back.
And
And
then
they would
sell it.
sell, yeah. And that's how
Mark
they made their limit, their
mark it
money.
up quite a bit.
Well, you were happy to get it. So, yeah.
Sounds like prison.
Well, I'd never been there, but I've definitely been to we have to go to someone's house to, you know, and everyone knew who sold it. So it wasn't, we only had the sheriffs. We didn't have anyone else. We had a deputy, I think,
One,
um,
one deputy.
for like the eighth largest county in Kentucky. Yes.
So you grew up like in Mayberry for our younger viewers. Um,
Yes.
Mayberry was a fictional town in a show back in the '70s called the Andy Griffith Show. It was
Yes.
the sheriff is deputy, and that was it for the entire town.
Well, when I went to grade school, my nearest, and it went through kindergarten through eighth grade. It was 7 miles away, and the population at that town was 300
How'd you get to school every day?
bus.
School bus or like public transport? There was no public transportation, was there?
There's nothing public transportation out there. It's all yellow
So
school bus.
so Terry, was your upbringing rural white or was it mixed?
Um,
Talk to me about high school. Like,
yeah,
what were the demographics of your high school?
I would probably say looking back, probably 95% was white, and the other 5% may have been colored. I know that my own family, my father, as I said earlier, was very abusive. And I found that out one time um, when I was a sophomore. I wasn't a senior as a sophomore. When he beat the living daylights out of me because he found out I was dating a black girl at high school. And up to that point, um, I didn't really understand what the issue was. She was cute. I liked her. She liked me. You know what I'm saying? We got along really well. Um, and but when I came home, I was explaining to my dad that I had a new girlfriend. And again, so my parents were divorced, so I'd spend the weekends with him, so we'd get child support. Um, he didn't like the fact that I was dating a black girl, and matter of fact, I had an afro in high school. And now,
When I
let me.
asked you to send me pictures, why didn't you send me that one?
Well, it's so I rode a 250 street bike, Kawasaki street bike to high school. My last 2 years of high school, and the humidity and stuff in Kentucky is horrible. And so the moment you take your helmet off, your hair just flops down, right? So I was complaining, and my girlfriend and I, if I think about it long enough, I'll come up with her name, but she's like, well, and had fairly long hair. It was a feather bane stuff in the, late 70s. Uh, and because it was high school was 76 to 81. So um, I went ahead and she's like, just go get a curly perm. And I'm like, what is that? She's like, well, you kind of look like my hair almost, but more curly. I'm like, oh, yeah, that's cool. I love your hair. So I went and got it. And my senior year, I had my photo and I looked more like, if you remember the sitcom Welcome Back, Cotter,
Yeah,
Epstein.
you look like Epstein.
I was Epstein. I was Epstein, dude. Yeah.
So before you caught a beating from your dad, had he ever given you any indication that he did not like black people?
No, I mean, we really didn't. There was, again, my nearest neighbor in the summertime was, I never went to town, right? And then I rode the school bus, and well, I don't recall grade school. I don't recall ever seeing anybody. So it was more just when I got to high school, and I don't know, this lady she was drop dead gorgeous, I thought. And anyways, so yeah, I never, never at all. That was a that was an eye-opening experience for me.
So when he was beating you, what was he saying to you?
He was
Do you
just telling
recall?
me that we don't cross lines or something. Um, so in the area, there's two large towns basically in my whole county, and one of them is called Hartford, and one is called Beaver Dam. And at Beaver Dam, there was a set of railroad tracks. I think on the, I think east side of it or something. And growing up, I didn't. That was where we used to go get our liquor and stuff. And but that was predominantly a colored neighborhood. And so he was saying I wasn't supposed to cross the line, wasn't supposed to cross the tracks, and all that was just I didn't understand it, Sean. I mean, I did, but I at the same time it was um,
It didn't make logical sense to you.
no, because I mean the players. I played football in high school. I was a skinny runt, but I still played football in high school. I'm a skinny runt now, but growing up, um, no, I didn't. There was no. I didn't see it. I mean, there wasn't very many, you know, of different race at our school, but the ones that were, we were friends. We played football together. I didn't. I never thought. I mean, didn't go home on birthday parties because everyone rode the damn school bus. So it wasn't like you had a birthday party and you invite all your friends. That never happened, right? So yeah, it was a big learning experience, and I really couldn't understand why that was like that.
So you're in high school, you're dating this girl. How did your peers treat you being with her? We know
Yeah,
how your dad felt about you being with her.
they were fine. I mean, they were all friends with her. It wasn't like that, I mean, we only had like 50 some people in my high school class. So it wasn't like, you know, no one knew each other. Everyone knew everybody.
Right.
So they, yeah, there was never any issue with that at school
So
whatsoever.
so your father was the only person that had an issue with you being with her.
Yeah.
No, nobody else said anything to you.
No, no one else really in my family said anything. Um, my father, I think his dad may have commented because I think I complained about getting the crap beat out of me. And he said, well, sometimes it's warranted. And I just left it at that. So,
Your grandfather said that.
yeah, his dad.
Right.
Yeah.
So you grew up in Kentucky in this non-diverse environment, very small, rural,
Yes.
and you've made it clear that you wanted to get out.
Oh, yeah. There was nothing there that um, interests me at all. I mean, I was the first child in my family to graduate high school. Um, the military again was my grace. Got me out of there.
So when you were in high school and you're approaching graduation, your goal was not to go to college; it was to join the military.
Well, I didn't think I had the opportunity to
To go to college?
because, yeah, because what I said earlier, there was a huge divide. You had people that had a lot of land, and for some reason, this may sound funny, but the last name of Titchener, they owned everything. It was like every car lot, every tractors thing, all that stuff, all was owned by Titcheners, and they had like huge plots of land, right? So when I was getting out of high school, I think I had one scholarship in to Tennessee, and the school was Mrs. Grissom's Community College, and I was like, I don't even know what that even is, and there was no one attended my graduation, by the way, none of my family.
Really?
Yeah, no,
Even though you were the first one to graduate, they had no interest in seeing you cap and gown.
no,
You were by yourself.
yeah.
So when
I
you say you wanted to get away from Kentucky, like you wanted to get away from family too.
Oh, yeah, I don't talk to any of my family. The only person I speak with now is my sister, who now lives in Texas. Um, we don't agree with things. She's no longer. I mean, she did drugs and stuff her entire life. Um, so I saw the negative side effects of watching my nephew grow up with you know coke and stuff laying all over the place. And um, the one deputy we used to have was also, of all things, the he was the pastor of our little church that we went to. It was a Southern Baptist church, and he used to tell me on Sundays, "Hey, next Friday, Terry, would be a good day for your mom to watch your nephew." And I realized that meant that my sister's house was going to be raided, and he didn't want my nephew to be mixed up. And I wouldn't tell my sister. I'd just tell my mom that, can we have Michael come and stay over? And he'd get raided. I mean, that
And you
was
wouldn't tell your sister she was about to get raided
no,
because you thought it was best for her to get in trouble.
no. I didn't want to um, have it so that he wouldn't tell me. I wanted to make sure
Ah,
that our nephew was out of it. And I thought that if I told her, and eventually he would have just put one and one together and said, okay, well, I can't tell Terry anymore. And again, I'm a senior in well, at the time I was a junior, sophomore, junior, and senior. So this went on for all my high school. my
You're
entire
pretty
time.
smart to really put all that together and not tell her.
I think it was just one of those things where I no one ever told me that, but I didn't want him not to tell me because for the fact of my nephew.
So, being from a small town and you and I both having an understanding of what Mayberry was,
Yeah,
they raid your sister's place, they find whatever they find.
yeah.
Did it ever get to the judicial branch of government, or did she just stay a couple of nights in the cell as punishment and they set her
Yeah,
loose?
that was about it. I mean, I think they flushed most of their product down the toilet, I think, and um, he, I think my at the time my brother-in-law probably served more time um, than my sister, but yeah, basically it was just short time stuff. Um, Most of it was probably for weed, to be honest with you. Um, I would think they got rid of the other stuff, so.
And
But
nothing on
weed,
your nothing on your record really.
no. Well,
So
nothing
with
on mine.
no,
No.
not yours. I'm just
Oh,
saying
hers?
on your
I have
sisters.
no idea. I'm sure there's stuff there on both. Yeah.
But stuff from Kentucky in the small town or beyond that. Do you see where I'm getting at? I'm
Yeah.
getting
Small
at.
town. Small town.
So did she have a record in the small town or no?
Yeah. I think her and all of her friends and all of his friends had records in the small town. And I say that because when I was in law enforcement, I was in for like a year. And at the time, I was still talking to my mom periodically. And she called and tells me that one of my nieces that I've never even met before got the crap beat out of her and she almost died. And so I call the sheriff's department in our small county and I said, "Hey, I'm Terry Hoskins. I'm an officer out in San Diego. I just found out that my niece um, got beaten pretty bad by her significant other. I didn't know if they were married or what. I said, I just, can someone, they tried to call her and stuff and they can't get her. Can someone just go check the welfare?" And he goes, "Hoskins, what's your sister's maiden name now?" And I told him, and he's like, "Is that relation to Michael?" And I said, "Well, that's my nephew." And he goes, "Man, we arrested that guy so many times. He has a rap sheet forever." And I'm like, "Well, I'm not talking about him. All I want you to do is just go knock on the door and make sure she's still alive. Just check the welfare." And so, sure, he goes, I'll be glad to do that for you. Um, and then within an hour, my mom called back and, I was the worst guy in the world for having law enforcement check the welfare on my niece. Um, I was this, I was that, I was the worst son you could ever imagine. And it was that was the point that I told my mom that I will never speak to her again. And I didn't. I haven't.
How old were you at the time?
Well, it was 2009.
Oh, really?
So yeah, I was only in the police department for 1 year. I mean, I was brand new. And I thought I was, again, the other one that were telling me they haven't seen her and that she was all black and blue. And so I just wanted someone to go with authority and just check to, make sure she was okay. That was it.
So you want to get out of Kentucky. You joined the Marines, correct?
Yes.
And where did you complete basic training?
So I was actually in Texas when I enlisted. I was working for a cement company. So I left when I graduated high school. Um, I took odd jobs, but I left. I found myself in Aransas Pass near Corpus Christi in Texas. Um, and I was working for a cement company out of Houston that was doing stuff on Padre Island. And I thought I died and went to heaven, Sean. So now just picture this. Here I am from the middle of nowhere, and all of a sudden spring break happens on Padre Island. I was like, I died and went to heaven. This is amazing.
Oh yeah,
So
no
I,
doubt.
yeah. So I stayed there for 6 months, whatever, and I wasn't making a lot of money, and so I watched the Sands of Iwo Jima on television, and I thought, that's it. I'm gonna go join the Marine Corps. So if you join on the west side of the Mississippi, your boot camp experience will be in California. And if you're on the east side of the Mississippi, then you'll go to South Carolina. So I went to California as a very first time I rode a plane is in 1983.
What was California like for you? Well, no, let me back up. When you left Kentucky and
Yeah,
went to Texas, was that just a culture shock for you?
it was because one, you could still drive and drink at 18 in Texas. Um, so that was new. I mean, I stopped at this one stripper bar in Houston, and I fell in love with everybody on the stage. I mean, the whole thing was a culture shock for me, you know. Um, so yeah, it was somewhat, I would say. Yeah,
So Texas basic training, correct?
Texas enlisted. I got sent to California for basic training.
Where in California?
San Diego,
Yep,
MCR.
MCRD.
Yeah, yeah. I
Okay,
checked in February 1983.
so for those of you who are watching that are unfamiliar with San Diego, MCRD is near downtown in the Point Loma area.
It's really, I would describe it just near the airport because it's not really downtown. I mean, for I, I would say it's on the backside of the airport.
Point Loma.
You got the airport in the middle between between the training depot and the airport, and then you got the Bay Area. I mean, it may be called that, to be honest with you,
It,
but
I know it's Point Loma. It's
yeah.
that
I
they
thought
would
the
consider.
naval, it probably is. I mean, the Naval Training Center, that used to be the Navy, one of the Navy boot camps. That's in Point Loma. So I would probably say, yeah, they're right next to each other. So,
Okay, so you're at MCRD.
yeah.
What was the what was the Marines like for you? What was your experience?
Um,
How would you summarize it?
I was in decent shape. I wasn't in great shape, but I was in decent shape. Um, it didn't bother me. All the yelling and beating, not really beating, but all the yelling and thrashing and all the other stuff. Um, and I was an infantry guy. That's what was my MOS. So I was a grunt, and you may laugh, but I actually thought it was pretty good the fact that I didn't have to hunt or shoot anything to eat because I had 3 meals a day. It's pretty good.
And if I do the math, you're a Desert Storm vet.
Yeah. So during my 26 years, um, I was in the tail end of the first Desert War. I was an advisor to the Royal Saudi Marine Corps, which was a fiasco, but still, because I was on the drill field as a drill instructor, and they pulled me to go teach infantry stuff to them. There was 5 of us that they sent. Um, I was also in Somalia. I don't know if you recall, but
I,
um, during the end of Somalia, we had Continue Hope and Restore Hope and Continue Hope, and I don't know, whatever it was. Well, we were there, but at the same time when we were in Mogadishu, the two um, presidents from Rwanda and Burundi got shot down. the Hutus and Tutsis were fighting, and it was a genocide that was going on. So President Clinton, which is really my favorite president, was um, president at the time, and he wanted to evacuate all the U.S. citizens out of Rwanda and Burundi. So they pulled us out of Mogadishu, put us back on a ship, sailed to Mombasa in Kenya, got on um, 41s, which is a um, just an airplane, a military airplane that transports. And they flew us. We were supposed to fly in Kigali, which is the airport in Rwanda, and we were supposed to secure the airport. But the ambassador made some will and deal that we would only fly into Burundi, take over the airport, and we wouldn't invade Rwanda as long as none of our allies or our U.S. citizens got touched. And so we evacuated like 250 some citizens and NGOs and that kind of stuff from that. So and then they pulled us back when that was done, and they sent us back to Somalia. Um, I was early on the tail end of Afghanistan, the first when we actually invaded Afghanistan at the airport and stuff, took over the
Okay.
airport. I was at tail end of that, and then I got sent back when we got home. We were supposed to stay home because we were been gone for 7 months already. But Bush decided he wanted to invade Iraq, so they put us back on a ship, sent us back to Kuwait, and then we were the second unit to go in when the invasion of Iraq. And I stayed there for 10 months, roughly. And then that was during that time I got injured. I got hit with during a small arms fire, and that's where I got I'm a Purple Heart recipient is because of that. Um, and then when we did the huge trade our handoff with the multi um, national coalition, then when we came back to this California, they realized I needed a couple of surgeries, so they sent me back to MCRD, and I remained there for my last 6 years or whatever. And then I
What were
just
your injuries, Terry, that you needed surgery for?
um, they had to realign everything in my mouth, so they took it all out, and they had to re-break both jaw bones. They took all I mean, everything came out, and then they pinned and plated it all back together. They went through my scalp this way, and all the damage that was done on the ligaments and stuff around my nasal passage. They cleaned all that out, um, and then I went back after 6 months, and they cut my chin off and they re-bracketed the chin because it was everything was grew back crooked because I refused to be evacuated. I didn't want to leave my people, so um, they had to do more stuff because of that.
And this was due to an explosion?
Yeah, it was during a firefight. Yeah,
For our
and
viewers, just checking in, you're watching the Cops and Convicts podcast with Sean Shepard. I'm Sean Shepard, and my guest tonight is Dr. Terry Hoskins. He's a former San Diego police officer and a 26-year in the Marines veteran.
yeah,
And he's telling us right now about being in a firefight and all the surgeries that he had to endure as a result of that firefight. And this was over in Iraq.
yes.
Okay, so you get a Purple Heart for that. When do you discharge?
So I've been very blessed in the military, Sean. The Marine, as I said earlier, the Marine Corps was my saving grace, right? I had the best mentors that I could ever want was in the military. They were of every race, every religion, genders. The only thing that mattered was your performance, and that was always um, so impressive to me, right? And so I achieved the highest rank you could as an enlisted guy. So I retired as a sergeant major. Um, it's like 0.4% of, or 0.04, whatever it is, of all enlisted men and women achieve that rank. So it's very rare. And, but I had as an infantry guy, I did everything I was supposed to do. I did all my special training and stuff. Um, I got, went to airborne school. Didn't really like it, but I only jumped out of 5 planes. That was enough for me. Um, Jumping was fine. Landing sucked, to be honest with you. I wasn't thrilled with that. So those soldiers who are airborne, I really have a lot of admiration for them. Um,
What's the worst part about landing? Landing?
um, yeah, because you don't have a parachute that you can glide in all nice and, the concept is you're about, I don't know, 1,300 feet above the ground and you jump and you got your pack, your rifle and everything, and you drop your pack so it hits first. And then the concept is you're supposed to land in a manner that you're um, you're non-injured and you can retrieve your pack and ditch your chute and stuff and then go off to whatever you're there to do, um, jump behind enemy lines or whatever. And I went to Fort Benning in January, so it was all frozen. So the ground was hard as a rock, and I just wasn't a good lander. I'll leave it at that. My
Did you ever
landing,
you ever break anything?
no, I was all bruised up. No, but I nothing broke. Yeah.
So you get discharged, and what's your plan after getting out of the Marines? What did you want to do at that point?
Well, I at that point I had my associate's degree, um, and I got that while I was in the infantry side of the house. And I knew that the city of San Diego was an amazing military community. I mean, they treat their military, they support them. They're always, donating stuff and giving them stuff. So I wanted to give back to what I thought was an amazing military community. And the only thing I could do as an infantry guy, Sean, was join the San Diego Police Department. So I did.
Why are you saying that's the only thing you could do?
That was the only thing that I was qualified for um, at that time. It was 2008 when I retired. And I started the process like a year before, um, that what I thought could have a direct impact on areas in San Diego. And I was very, go ahead. Yeah.
No, no, no. Go ahead. Please continue.
So I was fortunate after the academy, you have your 4 phases of San Diego PD have 4 phases of field training, and it's 1 month in every 4 different areas. And if you pass the first two, you go to the third one. If you pass the third one, you go to the fourth one, and after that one, you're you're on your own. And the different units, different commands will try to get people that they want. Well, my second phase, my second month was in City Heights. And at that point, I really wasn't sure whether or not law enforcement was my gig, right?
Why?
Um,
Why?
um, the the camaraderie and stuff that I had as a Marine was not there with law enforcement. Um, I found that a lot of the Marines were like myself, especially the enlisted side. They didn't have a hidden agenda. right? A lot of times they were actually leaving the place trying to better themselves. Well, I found that a lot of the law enforcement, the people that was not only just going into PD, but sheriffs, and because you all attend the same academy, um, they had other agendas sometimes. You know, it just wasn't the same as for me. I didn't like my instructors that I had at the academy. Um, Again, I spent 26 years and I obtained the highest rank that I could get. I was an advisor to a colonel, a general. So leadership was very important to me, and I didn't see that. Um, and that was troubling to me. So again, I didn't want to put my name with something that I wasn't fully committed on, because my name meant a lot to me. It was my reputation.
Talk to me about some of the agendas that you saw that officers and senior
Um,
officers had.
Not senior officers, just that a lot of them have other businesses, and they just, they'll, as a horrible example, but they may own a cabin in Big Bear. So they're always trying to get people to rent, their cabins or something, or buy whatever their businesses are. And to me, I'd be like, if you're trying to, why don't you give that weekend away to a fellow officer instead of making them pay for it? But so they had other agendas for making money and stuff, and it just wasn't something that, I don't want to sell one of my brothers something. If I got something and you want it, I'll give it to you. I don't want to sell it, right? And that's what basically happened in the Marine Corps. Growing up, that's was what I was experienced with. So the PD was it was just different. You had people that were, you know, um, generational cops. Their father were cops, grandfather was a cop. Now they're a cop. Um, and my thing was, and your point, what does that make you? You're just another cop to me, right? But and other little cliques that that held weight and that kind of stuff. Um, Again, it, I was still seeing whether or not I wanted to put my name with that. And it wasn't until the commanding officer of, well, the first, I think it was the first or second night at field training in City Heights. My partner, who I loved, this guy was amazing. Um, Big, tall, goofy white guy, just salt of the earth. Um, Him and I, we were probably 45 seconds away from it was a juvenile that got shot in, well, they didn't know where, but in a cul-de-sac off of 40th Street. I mean, I know the kid's name to this day. We were the first officers there. Um, my training officer said, I got the ribs. You used a mask. And I was having to hold his back of his head together with my hand as I'm putting the mask over. And it was at that time, of all things, I realized City Heights was where I wanted to go. I felt that um, my my leadership style and how I am, I always pride myself to be a person that could de-escalate things, make good leadership decisions, and wanted to make a difference. And you got to remember, a lot of the military people are young people, right? And so, especially the enlisted side, I mean, a lot of them are right out of high school. And so I felt I could easily influence the youth. Uh, so that was I mean, we did other stuff during that 18 days of working there, but the CEO at the time, um, was also a former Marine, big, tall, black guy. This guy was huge, just a corn-fed guy. Um, and Lawrence McKinney was his name. And I walked up to him and said, "Hey, sir, I'm Officer Hoskins. I'd be honored if you would, if I could come and work for you in City Heights." And he picked me, and I remained my entire 14 and a half years in City Heights. Loved it. That's where I live. I moved there. I moved right off the 94.
So you were at a point where you didn't even know that you wanted to remain a member of the San Diego Police Department. Are you
No,
telling me that that one incident where you're trying to keep this kid alive, it sounds like he didn't make it.
he
It-
didn't. He he succumbed to his injuries as we were there. And, you know, again, I had this happen to me in the military in Iraq. I mean, I was in war for 8 months where we got shot at and you shot back, and some of your people made it, some didn't, some got medevac. Um, and, you know, I felt at that time, I know it may be hard to, I felt that was what I was meant to do, was try to help people in the area, that I thought um, needed it the most. And to this day, I don't regret my decision.
but it was that one experience that made you want to remain a
Yes.
cop,
Yeah.
a death where
Yeah.
you tried to save this kid's life
Yeah.
and weren't able to,
No.
and you decided that I want to remain a cop, and I want to remain a cop in this particular area of San
Yeah.
Diego. For our viewers who don't know City Heights, it is
Yeah.
the most diverse area in terms of languages spoken
Yeah.
in San Diego.
Yes.
So you come from rural Kentucky,
Yeah. Yes.
um, got your ass beat by your pop for dating a black girl.
Yes.
It sounds to me like your military experience helped continue to shape who you already were in terms of people. You're a people person. Doesn't matter what they look like. You're a
Yeah.
people person. And it sounds to me like that prepared you for being a white cop in that wildly diverse neighborhood in
Yeah.
San Diego.
Yeah.
And I want to say this 2009, 2010, 2011 that you had this experience with this kid?
2009.
Okay, so this is the year that this country elected its first black president,
Yeah.
and you have a Muslim community there, Somali community there.
Yeah.
It's very different from southeastern San Diego, which is predominantly, well, at the time anyway, it was predominantly African American. These are
Yeah.
Africans,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And you decide you not only want to police there, but you want to live there.
Yeah.
What made you want to live there?
So again, my affection for young people, right? That perhaps grew up in a situation not similar to mine, but at the same time, maybe a situation where they don't have a lot of hope, right? They don't have a lot of faith that I'm going to get out of whatever I'm in. Um, and I wanted to just be able to explain that you do have your situation does not have to be your destination. Now I know there's times that it's just so hard to overcome, and I get that. Um, but I mean, I remember going to radio calls as a trainee still to a Somali community, and I would have to tell the officers, wait, before you go talk to a female, let's go find the elder. Now, remember, I'm the trainee, and I'd be like, no, no, you don't go talk to her first, unless it's an emergency. You have to let the elder know what's going on, and he will tell her that you're going to go talk to her. And if you had a female officer, that should be the one to go talk to.
Did
And
you
so
learn this from living there, or did you learn this on the job?
I learned that in the military. Got
Ah,
to
that's
remember, of
right.
all my places I've been, um, I even could speak a little bit of Arabic. And my dearest friend now, who's a surgeon in St. Louis, is a Muslim, and he's the nearest thing I have to a brother. And his name is Rashid. And again, he's the nearest thing I have to a brother. So to me, it was um, I recognized, yeah, I recognized that kids are amazing because kids don't know the difference a lot of times unless you teach them things, right? And so you could see that. I mean, the picture you put up there, besides my horrible mustache, but the kid smile, and even his father, the smile says it all, you know. And
What's wrong with the mustache, man? That's vintage adult film mustache, Terry.
that's it. That's why it.
That's awesome.
I mean, I'm old, but this really makes me look old. So, um, but we do this not dumb, but mustache November where we try to raise money, and so that's why people grow mustaches. So does the fire
Talk to
department.
me about this picture in particular. Was this taken in City Heights?
Yeah, all my pictures are from City Heights.
And who are these two guys? Do you
Oh
remember them?
no, I can't remember their names, but I think they were in. Um, I think the Village Green Apartments, which was actually at the time was District 4. They always redo the districting every 10 years or so. And but he was a soccer player, and I can't play soccer, but I love to watch it. And so just interacting with him, and then the father comes along, and so yeah, I can't remember their names. I mean, I have hundreds of photos like that where I would see someone walking down the road, two two young men, and um, they were actually Muslim. They weren't Somali, and I stopped them, get out. I mean, I was already outside my car. I think it was working on a homeless issue or something, an encampment or something. And I stopped them and go, "Hey, you guys in school?" And they're like, "Yeah, we're just coming back from school." And I said, "What's your favorite subject?" And one was like science, and one was like, I don't know, algebra or calculus or something. I'm like, "You two are brainiacs. You know that, right?" And they just kind of laughed. And so we talked for like probably 10 minutes. And I go, "Hey, can I get my picture made with you? I don't know anyone as smart as you guys. So I need to have my picture made with you." And they're like, "Okay." I go, "I'm not going to post it anywhere. This is my own camera. I'm always impressed when I meet young people that are just so smart, and the sky's the limit for them." And I'm like, "Hey, whatever you do, you may get into sports. I don't know. I don't know what your life is like, but you got a future. Don't get caught up in the small things. Stay focused." So I got pictures like that all the time, right? Um, so um, there's this one. I mean, I tell this story all the time. It's kind of I won't tell you her name, but I probably talked to thousands of homeless people during my 14 and 15 years as a police officer in San Diego. And you always have favorites of anything. You can say you don't have favorites, but you do. People have favorites. And my favorite homeless person was a little skinny, petite African American girl. And she was probably one of the smartest people I've ever met. She just had some vanities that she couldn't get rid of. And I used to tell her, I'd say, "Hey, what I always tell you?" And she says, "Officer Terry, you would say you care more about me than I do." And I go, "Well, I do, apparently." I go, "These guys, you don't need these guys." So one day we're talking. I've never arrested her. Could have numerous times, but she also helped us out numerous times. Um,
You could have arrested her for what?
it was just probably narcotic stuff related. I just there was no, it's like if you smoke cigarettes and people tell you to stop, you may stop a day, but you got to want to stop, right? So I couldn't see interrupting her life just for something that she's going to be right back out. I didn't want to do that to her. And she tells me she lives like a mile from where we were at. And I go, wait a minute, you live a mile from here? And she goes, yeah. I go, what's your address? So she tells me her address. I go, okay. So I took a selfie with her, Sean, got in my PD vehicle, drove to her address. Now, I didn't realize what it looked like at the time. Knocked on the door. A lady came to the door, didn't open the screen. Yes. And I said, hey, I'm Officer Terry. I'm looking for the parents or family of so and so. Through the screen, she goes, what has she done? She hadn't done anything. Why are you here? I'm like, what do you mean, why am I here? She goes, a cop doesn't come to my house asking me about so and so just for no reason. And I said, well, I have a reason. I said, I just found out 20 minutes ago that her family lives a mile from where she's staying. And I want to see if there's something I can do with the family to convince her to get off the street. So that's why I'm here. I go, look, here's a picture of us. I just took it. This is your daughter, right? She didn't say anything. And I'm thinking, okay, you know, I'm worn out my welcome. And then she goes, wait a minute. She comes out. She's crying. Um, she says, you're the first officer that's ever come to my house trying to get her to come home. She goes, you don't know how many times I've done that. She goes, she has a home. She just can't do the drugs and the alcohol and all the other people come with her. She has a home. And we talked for about 45 minutes, Sean. She has a sister in LA who's a lawyer. Her brother just retired at the time um, from the Air Force somewhere on the East Coast. I don't know exactly where, and was trying to join some sheriff's department out there. Um, she says, me and my partner, we're successful, but so and so has always been so and so. She's never wanted to go to school, always wanted to do this, always wanted to do that. We love her to pieces. She can come here anytime she wants. She goes, and you know what's really frustrating? Of all the officers that's ever came to us, you're a white guy, and you came to help her, not to look for her, to arrest her or anything. And I had this joke all the time, right? They say I'm white. I go, actually, I'm hazelnut. And, you know, they'd be like, hazelnut. I go, well, I'm from Kentucky. Everybody is, you know, interacting with everybody. So, um, actually, I'd probably say something a little bit more worse. But I go, well, I'm going to take a photo of us together and I'm going to go back to her and I'm going to see if I can convince her. So she goes, okay. So I took a selfie of her. We talked a little bit more, and I learned so much about her that I never knew. So I went back to her encampment. I get out. I say, hey, do you know this lady? So she comes over. I show her the picture on the phone. She starts to cry, and she's, yeah, that's my mom. And I'm like, what are you doing here? I'm like, she was one of the nicest family members I've ever spoken with. Why are you here? She loves you. Oh my God, you got so much going for you. She says, I can't give it up. So I have stories like that, Sean, of, that's why I'm so big in community policing. That's what I wrote my dissertation on. That was my company that I wanted to start, was about the community policing phenomenon, because there's so much more to law enforcement than just following, um, you know, serving, protecting, enforcing laws. There's so much more than that. And we we miss that mark, right? We do good with kids, like elementary school kids. We can give them stickers and high five them and let them sit behind the steering wheel of my car, and parents can take pictures and everything's all hunky dory, right? But somewhere between there and the back end of high school, we we lose them.
Let me ask you this, Terry. And
Yeah,
before I ask you, I want to welcome everybody to the Cops and Convicts podcast with Sean Shepard. Hit that subscribe button, hit the share button, hit that like button, and hit the notification bell. Joining me tonight is Dr. Terry Hoskins, former San Diego police officer, former Marine. Terry, you just described your level of involvement in a homeless person's life as a member of the San Diego Police Department. I want to ask you something about the profession.
yeah.
How come that's not the norm? How come the way you went about your business seems like outlier police work instead of common police work? What is it about the profession?
Well, I personally think that a lot of my 26 years in the military, I mean, we all have maybe seeds and values that we have from growing up that we got from our own biological parents. But the military shaped me, and they did so in such a way that, um, they made me who I am. And so, to me, um, that's, I don't know. I mean, there are other officers out there that I say are probably better than me in those areas, because I don't consider myself extraordinary or anything, right? But, um, I try to look at the big picture, Sean, and there's a lot of things that has been an eye opener for me since joining the police department. Um, Again, in the military, almost everyone there, they're there to escape something, especially the enlisted guys. Almost all of them, are gals. Um, I didn't realize where there were so many family members that's on probation or parole or anything like that until I joined the police department. I mean, just never. I thought everyone was like me, right? Why would I think anything different? And so I look at everyone as being like me, and I just realized all the tribulations that I went through growing up, never having money. Enlisted guys don't make a lot of money, especially early on, right? Um, but it gave me a chance to get the GI Bill. The military did, so I got all my 3 degrees while I was in the police department, and, um, it, I there's a lot of good stuff that goes on out there in law enforcement. Um,
How come we don't hear about it? You told me about you.
yeah,
I asked you about the profession.
yeah,
The way you go about your police work
yeah.
does not seem to be a common practice across law enforcement. And I'm asking you, why
Why?
is that the case? Why
I
aren't why is Terry Hoskins an outlier to your average citizen
Okay.
as opposed to Terry Hoskins being the norm within law enforcement? Because if you were the norm, there wouldn't be this backlash against law enforcement and the climate that we live in as it relates to law enforcement and particularly low income communities of color. So what
Right.
is it about the profession where you're not the norm?
I think there is a culture that is in any profession, and I use the analogy when I talk with people of, let's say, Sean, you go out today or tomorrow and buy a brand new car, 2024, whatever car you want, you just buy it. Do you want 1990s technology in that car? No. Everything has evolved since the 90s, right? We're still policing from stuff in the 90s. We still have laws on our books that are in the 90s. Reform has to happen, but everyone tries to do reform, I think, in the wrong areas. Like they try to do it in municipals, right? Like San Diego wants to do this. But the problem with that, Sean, is when that individual drives outside of San Diego city limits, it's the state requirements. So all reform has to be done at the state level. And then no municipality can do anything higher than that. So I'm always trying to tell people that reform has to go at the state level. And you know, um, there's a lot of times there's a lot of dinosaurs that
And what does that mean to you?
dinosaurs,
Yeah. What are
people that have
dinosaurs inside the police department to you?
people that have tenure that have been there forever and they're in high leadership positions and they're refusing to look. They're
Why is that
refusing
detrimental to the profession?
because it again the profession has to evolve, right? And you have to tell yourself, for me, like this is how bad of a driver I probably am. I never wrote tickets for things that I did. I roll stop signs. I don't fly through them, but I roll stop signs. I talk on the phone.
Cheers.
Yeah,
Keep
I
going.
don't drink
Keep
and
going.
yeah, and I do. I'm always seat belted in, but there's times I'd pull up at an intersection, and I have more fun doing this than writing tickets. I'd pull up at a four-way stop, and you look over at the left or right, and the person just eyeballs you, right? And then they go with the phone, and they just kind of drop the phone and stretch, and you know that they just been talking. You just seen them drive up talking on the phone. So as you pass, you honk your horn and you go on to your way.
And that's how you handle that because you talk on the phone.
Yeah, yeah,
Do you
and
speed? Do you speed?
yes,
Me too.
nope. Well, and that's kind of hard too because I never got radar trained, right? So radar is typically your traffic cops who will, set in an area and do a radar gun. Well, I never got that training. So for me to say you were speeding, I have to get behind you
And pace
and
you.
trail and pace you at a certain. Well, that's too much trouble. I don't want to do that. Why do I want to? I'm getting behind you. I'm doing the same pace as you. Now we got two people that's going to cause an accident.
You know what's interesting, Terry? I didn't know anything about pacing till I moved to San Diego because back east is just a radar trap. On
Yeah.
the freeways,
Yes.
on the
Anywhere.
local
Yeah.
streets, it's
Right.
strictly radar as far as I can remember.
Yeah.
When I first moved to San Diego in 1990, I got two speeding tickets on the 15 from some cop pacing me. I never saw
Yeah.
him. So you talk about dinosaurs. Let me say this to you.
Yeah.
I have a friend and he is a very, very high ranking member of law enforcement. I'm not going to tell you where, because anybody watching this, if I say where, they'll probably be able to put two and two together. And he has talked to me about the language I use when it comes to Game Changer, trying to sell the model to other people in law enforcement. And he has told me not to use the word reform. So a lot of cops don't like that word because it makes it sound like there's something wrong with them. I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah.
I never said anything to him. I just took that all in.
Yeah.
I wanted to
Well,
share that with you because
yeah,
you have freely used the word reform like
all the
there's,
time.
no, there's nothing wrong with it. But
No.
this guy who would have been your boss, he would have been the boss, doesn't like that word.
So the rank that I had in the military, I was an advisor, like I said earlier, to a colonel, a couple of colonels, to a general, and they really welcomed my um, advice. It was a suggestion, right? They welcomed my approach as an enlisted guy to whatever issue that we were discussing. There is very little chiefs that has ever liked me
Chiefs don't like you.
in PD. No.
Why?
Well, one, I speak my mind. Um, when I don't know if you ever was land, you ever remember Lansdowne?
Yeah.
Okay, so towards the end of his tenure, we were having a lot of officers get in trouble for everything. You know, I think that was the same time that one detective was, you know, um, having raping hookers or something, whatever was going on in his department as a detective and um, whatever. And then so we had a bunch of people that were getting arrested for DUIs. So Lansdowne had a meeting at the Charger Stadium in one of those big rooms. And I was a brand new cop, probably on a year, and my partner who I love, um, we got there early. I'm like, hey, let's just set up front. So we were setting up front, the front table, and Lansdowne was talking about 3 feet in front of us. And he spoke for, I don't know, 45 minutes, whatever it was. And during his course of conversation, it was his officers see a lot, they experience a lot. There's a lot of trauma that they see day in and day out that they have to compartmentalize and at the same time continue to do their job on that same day. You go to a wreck, if you're a father, you go to a traffic collision and everyone it's a fatality and everyone in the vehicle succumb to their injuries and there's a baby there, same age as yours. When that is done, you still have to go and do other things. So he was saying that, he understands the stress of all of that. And when officers are good officers, and I don't know how he categorized them, he didn't say, he wasn't going to throw an officer under the bus for DUI. So my light on my head went click. Because in the military, if you had a DUI, you are no longer qualified for promotion. You basically were done. Whatever time you had left on your contract, you were done. If you actually went to court and it wasn't like a wet and reckless or whatever, and it got to be a citation, but if you actually was booked and it got adjudicated as driving while under the influence, your career was ended. So I'm sitting there with my partner, who's probably on 12 years at this point, very seasoned compared to me, right? So as Landau continues to talk, he references this one guy who's had like 3 DUIs.
A cop.
Yeah. So he goes on and he's talking about a lot of things. And at one point he says, "So, anybody have any questions?" Now I'm 3 feet in front of him. So I raise my hand, and my buddy is hitting me on the leg like, "Don't do it. Don't do it, Terry." I'm like, "I got to ask this question." So he goes, I mean, he can't not pick me. I'm the only one right in front of him, right? So he picks me. I stand up and I say, "Chief, I'm Officer Terry Hoskins. I work at Mid City Division. I have a question for you." "Yeah, what's your question?" "Why do we have an officer with 3 DUIs still on the department?" I step back down. That's easy question, right? Whole area goes quiet. He talks for like another 10 minutes. And he says, "I think did that answer your question?" I stood back up and I said, "No, sir, it didn't. I don't know why we have an officer with the 3 DUIs on our department. That blows my mind." I sat back down. He goes into like another 10-minute song and dance. And at that point, my partner's hanging onto my trouser legs. He won't let me stand back up. And he goes, the chief made the comment that, "You don't even know that officer could be in this group." We had about 150 people in this room. And so I stood up and I said, "Chief, I could care less if he's sitting next to me. I don't see why we have someone who's had a DUI 3 times and on a department. How can we justify that?" I sit back down. He goes into like another, I don't know, 2 minute spiel. And he says, Who else got questions?" And he starts, feeding um, or filling other questions. And then when it was all said and done, he wouldn't even look at me. He just walked away. The junior chief walked up to me and said, "Who are you?" And I said, "Says it my name tag, Officer Hoskins, work at Mid City." "Hoskins?" I said, "Yes, Hoskins. It says it on my name tag." Most people wouldn't ask the chief that question, much less 3 times. And I said, "Well, that's a problem. You should have probably asked him that 3 times, because I still don't know why we have this guy on our department." "Yeah, Hoskins, huh?" So, Hoskins. So on our way out, my partner said, "You're never going to get promoted, Terry." I'm like, "You think I want to get promoted? No, I don't want to get promoted. I did all that in my military days.
So let
I
me
don't want
ask
to do
you,
that now." Yeah.
you asked a legitimate question
Hmm.
about something that is obviously out of place about the department and the way they handled, in this particular case, an officer that has 3 DUIs. And the deputy chief, correct me if I'm wrong, the
Well, the
deputy
first,
chief, the,
yeah,
the second chief,
yeah,
whatever he said to you made your partner say, you're never going to get promoted.
yeah.
Why wouldn't you get promoted? Because you asked a
Because
question. Tell me about the law enforcement culture, why you wouldn't get promoted.
if the same mindset was in her culture that that chief clearly identified with, then I would be the guy that would be going against the grain. That's when I talk about dinosaurs, people who, you know, whether it's generational. I mean, we have generational poverty, right? We also have generational professions where people just same thing happens. Um, I always had the ability to speak my mind. I did it all the time in the Marine Corps. I was respectful with it, but I still spoke my mind. And I didn't see why being with PD was going to do me. I wasn't going to be any different, because for me to look in the mirror every day, I have to be happy with myself, right? And uh,
Keep talking.
yeah, so I have to be happy with myself. I have to be pleased with the person that I am, and I have to ask myself, what is really my goal? I can say I want to protect and serve, right? What does that mean, right? I don't think as a nation we do. I mean, I was always grew up listening to Andy Griffin show and Mayberry, where if you did your time, you're good to go. You did your time, right? But you know, and I know that's not the case. We get people that have done their time, they're completely off paper, and they still can't get a job because when someone looks on their record, it pops up. That shouldn't be. That needs to go away. If we expect people now, and I say that, and I realize, you know, if you're a sex offender, um, arson, maybe not. I mean, there may be some, but other stuff, no. And you know, how much money? I want to get into the Israeli and Palestine thing, but how much money have we placed in bombs? That's basically killing young babies in Palestine. Lots. That money should be going to people who have served their time, Sean. A lot of times they don't have a support system. Wraparound programs are great, but a lot of times they're unfunded as well, or underfunded. Yeah, probably the best way of saying that. And I think that a lot of that money should be given to, let's say I'm a shipyard. Then why not? Why can't the government know that Terry, Sean, and Jim and Larry are getting completely off paper? And why not the government pay me a wage to go learn a profession at the shipyard? So the shipyard gets an extra body for free. They have to teach me, so it's going to be manual labor until I learn something. But the government can be paying it so that Terry and Sean actually have something to do when we get out instead of the status quo. You know how many times I used to, you know, depending on what you, certain things you have to arrest for, right? So felonies we have to arrest. Misdemeanors, it depends. You can, you know, that's a judgment call on the officers a lot of times. But a lot of the felonies are just because there's no support system, Sean. And you got to survive. So how do you survive? They put you in a halfway house or whatever they want to call those facilities. A lot of times there's people worse in there than what they were be that, you know, that's why a lot of people don't like those. It's just a horrible situation that our justice system does. And that should be something that um, needs to change. And and Terry's not going to make that happen. You realize that. I mean, I realize. And there may be programs out there that does that, right? And there may be businesses out there that does hire, you know, uh, men and women that meet that fall into that criteria, but it's not enough. And we wonder why, you know, people get, you know, recidivism is high at times. The assistance is important. I can't hear you. We lost you. Lost the sound.
What about now?
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, so for those who don't know what recidivism means, it means you've been in prison, you're out, and you go back. Go out and you go back. That's what recidivism is. You're violating your parole. I wanted to ask you, Terry, what is the biggest thing about what's the biggest thing that you would change about law enforcement culture? You've been a cop for 15 years.
I would, I don't know if a cop could change anything, first of all, but I would definitely want more of a restorative justice for juveniles that was legitimate, not just in name only. I think that would be important. And I think we need to put more emphasis on desistance. You know, if I done something bad today, severely bad, whatever it is, and then I'm still in the pipeline, but my I'm not doing the same level of crime. It's going down. That's progress. Maybe not enough, but it's progress, and we need to build on those things. And so I think that um, I would definitely try to have all reform. And again, I'm not saying that my reform is would be good or not good, but all reform needs to be at the state level, and that's where it needs to go. And that way, it's consistent with everywhere in the state.
You said something to me a while back, and you said it would be controversial if you said it in public. And it was about officer involved shootings
Yeah,
and when an officer
yeah,
should draw his or her gun.
yeah.
Talk to our viewers about how you see officer involved shootings and how officers should respond to a threat.
So if I recall our conversation correctly, um, I probably would have referenced them the many times I was shot at in war, and just because someone is shooting at you, um, obviously I'm still talking. So when we were in Mogadishu at the embassy, we had a rules of engagement that basically said that we couldn't shoot at anybody that wasn't shooting at us first. Everybody carried weapons, right? A lot of them, the men carried weapons. They carried big sticks too. I mean, they beat the crap out of, people in Somalia and Mogadishu with these huge sticks, probably more severely than if they had a gun. But we could not, that was our rules of engagement. We couldn't shoot unless we were fired upon. So I told myself early on that the last thing, again, I've been shot at, I've been hit, I've shot at people, I've hit people. Um, that was during a period of wartime.
This is in
Um,
the military.
yes, military
Oh,
time.
okay, I
Okay,
get
so
that.
but it plays a part though. What I'm saying is I told myself that I would not ever want to do that to one of our citizens, right? So, I mean, there's times where I was, you know, people were pointing at me. Everybody said he had a gun, and it ended up being like I don't know, a pen or an oversized toenail clipper, right? And I did shoot because I was so accustomed to being in that situation where I was shot at before at snipers, and they even couldn't. They made it just shoot above us. They couldn't get low enough to hit us. So we got to the point we didn't even care about it anymore. So that guided a lot of my behaviorisms, right? So for me, even if a guy, I could clearly see he had a handgun or long rifle pointing at me, I probably would wait before to shoot before I got shot at.
And
That's
when you
me.
told me, when you said this to me, you said most officers would think that you're crazy
Yeah,
for thinking that.
yeah.
And so I want to summarize what you just said. You think that officers should not fire at citizens or anybody unless they were fired at first.
I said that would be me. Every officer has to look themselves in the mirror, Sean, as I said earlier, and be happy with the person that they're looking at. But I will say that, um, and I know that it's taught at the academy, where it was when I went through, whatever, 15 years ago, that if you have a knife and you're half a block away, you're not going to do anything with me with that knife. I know that. If we get closer, you know, there's that period of, okay, if I'm running at you with the knife, could you react and that kind of stuff. And it all goes back to the officer that's there. I do think that, and I think I might have said this then, that if if things continue down the road like it has been, where people are shot that are unarmed, um, whether the officers were told one thing or, I mean, but if they were shot and it was unarmed, I will think eventually we're going to be certain states will make it so that you cannot return fire unless you're shot at or you shoot at another person, right?
Well, it won't be Kentucky, Terry,
No, no,
or any place south of there either.
no, or north probably. So,
Right.
Indiana, Illinois, Ohio, it's the same. So, but but Sean, I think I might have said just because it says that I can write you a ticket doesn't mean I'm going to write you a ticket. Just because it says I am justifiable right if I believe that I'm in danger to shoot you doesn't mean that I'm going to do that. Everything is on what that individual officer believes. That's the problem with that concept is that you can't cookie cutter it. Um, cookie cutter it, yeah. Um, you know, but I do think eventually that's if and I haven't looked at any of the data from NCIS or what the numbers are or anything like that. I used to all the time, but I just haven't for a while. As you know, I ran for office and I got hands down beat pretty bad. So it gives me the opportunity now. I can go back and do other things that I'm really passionate about. Um, but there's a reason why everyone can't be a firefighter, Sean, right? Not everybody's going to want to run into a house that's on fire or a building or a structure that's on fire, right? Not everybody can be a cop. So for me, it went right back to that wee hours of the morning when it was dark on that cul-de-sac, when I had that young man's head in my hand, a mask on his face, and I'm doing all I could just to keep his back of his head together, much less everything else that was just falling out. Um, I would not want to do that. to one of our citizens. Is that,
Mm.
you know what I'm saying? Now, if you was to shoot at me, I wouldn't have a problem hitting you at all. I've done that. But it took that to happen before I would shoot back.
Talk to me about Plenipotentiary Policing, Inc.
Yeah. So again, my passion is community policing. I love
Okay.
it. We don't do it right. Matter of fact, there's not many organizations that do simply because they don't have the finance, the means to do it, right? They don't have the bodies and everything. So when I did my doctorate, I wanted to defend my dissertation on community policing. Now, before that, I looked up plenipotentiary and I was looking at what that actually meant. I forgot what I was reading. I don't know. I like reading Shakespeare and some other stuff sometimes. So, whatever I was reading, that word popped up and I didn't know what it meant, didn't know what it means. So, I looked it up and it meant an ambassador. And I thought, that is a way I want to describe law enforcement. We should be the ambassador of law enforcement. So an ambassador has all the rights and privileges given to them by the head of state, and yet their conduct and their behaviorism should be in such a way that it brings credit and legitimacy to the country, not take away. So I didn't want to say ambassador style of policing because I think people's already said that somewhere. So I used the term plenipotentiary because I think my actions as a law enforcement officer should be to the point where it brings credibility, which brings legitimacy to my job. And that's how I think. So my company that I have, I wanted to be a lecturer and go around and talk to law enforcement agencies about this concept and then implement my community policing with it.
Is your community policing model at all rooted in the 9 principles of principled policing?
Probably not.
No?
Probably not. So, as an example, I did a qualitative study using focus groups. Typically, when you would research any type of community policing programs or concepts, whoever's doing the research would always interview some type of a law enforcement entity, right, with it. I didn't want to touch anything that was law enforcement. So I used focus groups that were from two faith-based organizations in District 9 and two faith-based organizations in District 4. The only criteria you had to have met was you had to be 18 or over and get permission, you authorized, you wanted to be voluntarily in this focus group, and you had to have had direct knowledge of something that happened. It could have happened to you directly, like law enforcement could have stopped you directly and that went south. So you have that direct knowledge, or they stopped me and you were the passenger and you still seen it firsthand. I didn't care if it was good, I didn't care if it was bad, and all my questions pertained to that. And um, I always had a different understanding of community policing. In other words, let's say you got an event going, whatever, softball event from high school kids, or whatever, right? It's an event, and law enforcement are there. Typically, how is law enforcement at those events? Now I'm asking you a question. How do you typically see law enforcement at those events?
I see them standing on the periphery, fraternizing with each other,
Okay.
um, taking
So,
advantage of the overtime, and I mean, they're really not doing much.
well, I beg to differ there, but your concept is right. So I went when our ladies soccer team won the World Cup several years ago. There was a clinic that they were putting on um, at one of the fields at San Diego State or something. And so I wanted to be, I wanted to go and participate, right? So now I wasn't paid overtime, but I wanted to go and participate. They had officers there that were there for the event.
Right.
So I walk up, and what you're saying, they're on the perimeters. Um, one could say they're um, looking at the overall picture, right? Making sure nothing is coming from, but still, they're still grouped, they're still interacting with each other. I was thrilled that I got to see a World Cup gold medal. I've never seen one. Now, your connection with sports, you may have seen, the epitome of awards and accolades. Not me. Seeing that World Cup medal was absolutely amazing. And in seeing the lady who it belonged to. So they were doing all these drills and they had other coaches out there. And I thought, okay. So I walked over there to the officers and I'm like, hey, what are you guys standing here for? We're working at Terry. I go, well, it doesn't take Sherlock to figure that one out. I said, but you're missing a great opportunity. And they're like, opportunity? I'm like, yeah, these are kids. Go do grass drills with them. I go, watch, I'll show you. So I go get in a group. I am the worst soccer player you could ever imagine. But I'm running the drills. They're laughing at me. They're taking the ball away from me. We're sprinting. And all of a sudden I look around and there's two or three other officers finally doing the same thing in another with another group, right? And all that took, Sean, was one person to say, hey, take advantage of your opportunity. These are kids. Let them know who you are, not by standing in a corner and not being approachable. They're not going to run to you, unless you got stickers, right? But you go to them, and all of a sudden you know, I, so I started this one program with Hoover High School and Crawford High School. That's only two high schools in City Heights, where the one that was really successful was with Crawford. I started too late with Hoover, so the next season I started with Crawford, where I would show up to some of the home games, and I got with the coach and the principal and they're like, why do you want to do that? And I'm like, okay, I'm not working the event, first of all. So I'm not going to be, you got school police to do all that shit, right? That's not what I'm doing. I can help, but that's not what I'm there for. I want to interact with the football team. They're like, are you going to be in uniform? I'm like, absolutely. I go, I love my high school football days. I can interact with the team. I can help pump them up. I won't interfere with the coaching or anything like that. That's not what I'm doing. But it, the last game, I forgot if they won or lost. I can't really remember. Um, but I bought 30 pizzas to feed the team on the last game day, or it may have been just. I think it may have just been a practice.
Out of your
Anyway,
own pocket?
oh yeah, out of my own pocket to feed the kids. Dude, those young men, they eat. Oh my God, they can put some food down. I'm telling
I'm
you.
aware. I'm
Yeah,
aware.
yeah.
I
Well,
used to be one of them.
and well, I was always a skinny guy, but some of these some of these are big corn-fed kids, and they can eat. And you know, it wasn't about the feeding them, right? Because anyone can buy pizzas, but it was about having a slice of pizza, talking to one of them about the game, right? About what they did. And I played defensive end. I got my ass smacked all the time. I was a little runt. But to see some of these kids, how big they are, and I'd be like, hey, do this, do the spin move. They're like, I'm like, just do it, just try it. The moment he hits you, spin one way or the other. I don't care. Just spin, see how it works. And sometimes, sometimes they tried, sometimes they didn't. But that interaction, I hope it planted its seed somewhere. It did to me. It
A
reinforced
seed in what way?
that we're all the same. Kind of like what the same game changer concept was. We're the same. We may be different, but we can have the same lives. We're not as different as what people think we are. So
Right.
here I am. I'm in uniform. I love football. They love football. I hope they did. We're not that different. We guess to be big enough to see that.
Talk to me about your best moment in law enforcement. Can you pick one out?
Uh, yes, I'm at Clay Park. We're in the middle of COVID. Everybody else is not going to work. The only people that were still going to work was law enforcement, firefighters, and medics. And San Diego was so far behind, they didn't even give us protective masks. We had to go out and buy them for the longest time. So at Clay Park and Rolando um, has a huge sidewalk that basically divides it, right? And I went and yellow taped the playground off because no one was cleaning it, and I didn't want people to. And you weren't supposed to be using parks anyways, right? So there's these two little girls, probably six. They were twins. They had ponytails here, right? Now, anytime I see, like, my daughters should be 32 in June, right? So when I think of my daughter without looking at a picture, I see ponytails. That's how I look at my daughter, right? So these two little girls were riding whatever their bicycles were, small ones, and mom was with them. And mom, as I'm walking over to them, I'm just really going to tell them that they're doing a good job on their bikes. And mom's like, "We're not staying. We're just riding through." I'm like, that wasn't why I'm. Again, we're all masked up, right? I go, "That's not why I'm coming over." I said, "I'm just happy that your kids are doing so well on the bicycles." And now there were two. It was an African American family. One of the two girls says, "Mom," said something like, "Mom, can I tell the police officer about the water?" And she says, "Yes." The girl goes, "We have a leak. Can I show you?" And I said, "Absolutely." So they rode to this fire hydrant that was on the sidewalk next to the park, and there was water coming out of the hydrant, the fire hydrant. She goes, I found this while we were riding, and mom said that it's a waste and we need to tell somebody. So I told you. And I thought, yes, you did. So I took a picture. I didn't take a picture with me with them because of COVID. So it was just a mom and the two girls on their bicycles. And they had their mask on, so you really couldn't see anything. But I had one of the ladies, the girl that told me about it, I go, okay, but you're going to be here. when I radio and tell the dispatcher to have someone come out and look at it, okay? She goes, okay, all excited. So I got on the air, I radioed, and I wanted to have shops, which is who we always send out to look at those things. And I said, and the person who told me about it is standing right here. She's the young lady that told me. And she said what her name, I can't remember what her name was. And, everything was, hunky dory, got off the air. That little lady was so happy. The fact that, one, she saw the water leaking, and two, she told someone, and that person acted on it. And you would have thought that she was king of the park,
I
all
think that's
because
what I think that that's what all of us want, even at a young age, to have a voice, to be
it
listened
is.
to,
Yeah,
and then something actually happened
yeah,
as a result of be talking to you.
yeah. Now, I didn't stick around for shops to show up, and the mom and her two daughters rode on through the park like they said they were doing, and I assumed they went home. Um, but that interaction made me smile because in a day where there wasn't much hope, everybody was COVID, people were dying. One little girl was king of the park, or I guess I would say queen of the park in this case, and that was a good feeling.
Now I got to ask you the other question.
Worst one,
What was your worst moment in law enforcement?
Jeremy Henwood Park, which is across from our police station, is named after one of our officers. Um, I first met him in May of 2009. We worked on the same night unit. He was an officer in the Marine Corps Reserves. He was a captain. And I remember him telling me one night, the rest of the squad was, kind of um, bickering with us back and forth, wanting us to banter each other. You got a captain, you got an old enlisted guy. They wanted us to banter each other. And one time he goes, officers don't fraternize with enlisted men. They're like, ooh, right? And I go, um, Jeremy, I said, I don't want you to take offense to this, but when I was active duty towards the end of my career, I wouldn't even talk to you. You wouldn't be high enough in the officer's rank for me to even acknowledge. I said, so you're right. I wouldn't fraternize with you. You'd have to be a lieutenant colonel before I'd fraternize with you. Well, when I got permanently stationed there, he was picked to go overseas on his first command. So he asked me the relationship between a commanding officer and their senior enlisted. So I explained that relationship to him. He went overseas, came back like 7 or 8 months later. I don't know what part of Iraq they went to or Afghanistan. I don't know that. But once you come back from having a long period of away, you have to go back through training, make sure that if there's any laws that change since you've been gone and all that, just get you back up to speed. Well, I don't know if you remember, there was a gentleman in um, I want to say Chula Vista that had just shot a person, maybe been two people at the In and Out, and they were looking for him. And he was on the 8 when they lost, CHP lost him. Well, that information never got disseminated, at a, or at least Jeremy didn't hear it, one of the two. I was off duty at the time, but Jeremy was a friend of mine. And right before this individual took his life, he was in McDonald's off of Fairmont. And there was a little kid um, trying to buy French fries, but didn't have enough money. So Jeremy bought the kid French fries. And the kid was just elated, ran out the door with all these French fries. Jeremy gets his meal, whatever he bought, gets in his car, pulls out on University, and was headed east. And typically, if you're driving a cop car and someone wants you to sign a ticket, right? Or they want you to maybe directions, or they want to report something, they'll either blow their horn or flash you with their lights. Jeremy got on the air and said there's a vehicle behind him, flashed him with his lights. He's going to pull over, put him out on a stop. While he was doing something on his computer, looking. So here's the steering wheel. He's looking kind of diagonal to the right. The gentleman pulled up next to him was the same guy that shot those two people in and out. Raised a shotgun, shot him in the head right here. The individual drove on. Um,
Shot him for no reason.
no reason. Um, there was a lady that was outside. Now the vehicle was stopped, so it didn't like roll and hit anything. But a lady got in the car, the cop car, because Jeremy's head was just disintegrated, and got on the air and said, "I don't know how to do this, but your officer in this vehicle just got shot. The vehicle that shot, or the person that shot, is in a vehicle. It's like a blue car, or whatever." I mean, that was, I don't know what she said, but gave the description of it. They ended up, it was a shootout. Probably 5 minutes later, the guy was looking, he was, caught by suicide, I think.
What year
Um,
was this?
was 12 years ago, August.
Was the shootout near the corner of Fairmount and University, or no?
It wasn't that far away. It was on University, but it wasn't at Fairmont. It was a couple of blocks further east.
Okay. I'm just asking because that area is quite lively.
It
you
is.
know.
I know.
Um,
So,
sorry to hear that.
um, yeah, so that was probably one of my, you know, I mean, there isn't any one time that was worse. I mean, walking up to a vehicle and finding people OD over drugs that was bad drugs is horrible. That's never a good sight.
They were all dead.
I know. I mean, uh, I'm talking another incident. So yeah, there's times that someone's reported, when fentanyl was just coming in itself and coming on the scene, and get reports of a vehicle that's been parked for a while. There's two people look like they're passed out. Um, no one's walked up to the vehicle or anything, and then you walk up and they're OD'd. You don't know whether or not it was just bad. It was fentanyl. You can tell by the look on the face and the bubbles and stuff. But um, death of an infant, it's horrible. Remember, I said I look at my daughter and I see ponytails, pigtails. Watching a family um, suffer through the loss I mean, any loss of a child is horrific, but infant death is hard to swallow, hard to justify. You know, so there isn't any one particular you know bad time, other than I would say Jeremy, because I know him really well, and I waited at the hospital until his family, mom and dad and sister, flew in from Texas before they took him off the machine. And he donated his kidney. He gave all of his organs. He donated his organs. He was a donor. And I got to meet for the 10-year anniversary of his death. I don't know if you want to call it an anniversary, but the 10-year of his passing. one of the ladies who got his kidneys, received one of his kidneys, showed up at his memorial service, our celebration of life service. And I got to meet her. That was pretty cool because her daughter, who were then 19, said that her mom wouldn't have got to see her graduate if Jeremy's wouldn't have donated his kidney to her. So all those things, are relevant. Um, but um, I'm trying to find. I know the cards you made for the first Game Changer
Yeah.
night you gave out. I found two of them like 2 days ago, and I meant to keep them on my desk, and it's a mess at the moment. And so I don't know where they're at. I apologize. I was going
Oh,
to
you
share
don't
them.
have to apologize, Terry. I want to thank you for taking the time to get together and having this conversation that's been well overdue. I want to give you an opportunity to share with our viewers. Is there any websites? Is there anything that you want to plug and send people to so they can learn about your view of community policing?
Yeah. So my the name of my dissertation that I defended is rather long. So and I want to read it to you because even I don't even remember it anymore. It's been a couple of years now. But it's titled "The Community Policing Phenomenon: Perceptions of Congregational Members of Faith-Based Organizations on Community Policing in Two Multicultural Community Districts in the City of San Diego, California." And I'll read you my abstract. Do you mind?
Good.
Get one? Okay. And let me put my glasses on to make sure I try not to do a glare, but the current nationally polarized views of law enforcement indicate a dwarf of mistrust between communities and law enforcement officers. Law enforcement officers sworn to protect and serve those same communities. This deficiency in law enforcement culture suggests a necessity for an accurate and efficient evaluation of the current community policing phenomenon. These inadequacies indicate additional concern that affect the heart of community policing. This absence necessitates legitimacy and efficiency characteristics by using collaboration between the community, law enforcement, elected officials to problem solve and derive working solutions to concern that detract from community safety and security. This research and its questions were designed to actionate the participants' actual lived experiences concerning the phenomenon of community policing from their perception. The participants' response provided significant evidence for determining desired community policing practices, emphasizing transitioning from current policing approaches to one desired by the communities that they serve. This phenomenological research was intended to provide reliable feedback on the current community policing phenomenon practices from the perceptions of participants who have lived the experiences of these community policing phenomenons firsthand. Um, so it's all about change, and it's all about um, it's a grading book, grading skill. If anyone does want to look at it, it's in the um, you know Library of Congress. Uh, it's the last two chapters are the most important.
Do you have a website?
I No, I do not. I'm just now because then when I wanted to wait till I got retired before I kicked it up. I didn't want someone to um, trying to say I was only trying to make money as a cop. I didn't want to have those. I didn't want to be that guy that had an agenda because I
Where'd you
didn't have
get your doctorate in?
public administration.
public administration.
Yeah.
Well, Dr. Hoskins,
Terry.
thank you for your time. It's been great having this conversation and listening to your story and what you've done with your life. And I learned a lot. There's a lot about you I didn't know. And I hope that we're able to do this again sometime. And do me a favor.
Sure.
If there's anybody else inside of law enforcement that's about to get out, I want us to talk to people who can speak freely.
Yeah.
Let's talk offline, and I want to get them on the podcast. But
Okay, I'll see. I'm kind of out of that mix a little bit sometimes because
you know people though, man. You know people.
So there's a lady that I got a person for you.
Okay, Terry, thank you.
No, is a privilege, Sean. I haven't seen you for a long time. We tried to do this a couple years ago, I think, and I'm really honored the fact that you still wanted me to come and talk, and I appreciate that.
Always, man. You know I'm a man of my word, and to our viewers, stay tapped into what we're doing, whether it's TikTok. I'm not sure who our next guest is going to be next week, but I'll let you know. Dr. Terry Hoskins, former San Diego Police Department officer. Thank you for joining us, bro. I appreciate you.
What you do, Sean, is good. Keep it up, brother.
I'll do that.
Thank you.
Peace
I
out.
don't know how to turn this off, so you're going to have to do it on your own.
Don't worry. I got you.
All right.